Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the House Committee on Government and Housing. Today is Friday, March 12th, 2021, and we're in room 35. At this time, I will ask the clerk to call the roll.
Chairman Hull.
Present.
First Vice Chair Fogarty.
Present.
Second Vice Chair Speakman.
Present.
Representative Alzate. Representative Barrows. Representative Cardillo. Representative Edwards. Representative Kazarian.
Present.
Representative Charlene Lima. Representative Stephen Lima. Representative David Morales.
Present.
Representative Morgan. Representative Price.
Present.
Representative Shanley. Representative Williams. That completes the attendance you have of quorum, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Now we will move to House Bill 5101. House Bill 5101, enact, validate, and ratify an amendment to the Charter of the Town of Jamestown. I ask that this bill now be moved for passage.
So moved.
So moved and seconded. Roll call vote.
May I ask who's second?
Vice Chair Speakman.
House Bill 5101 was moved for passage. Motion by First Vice Chair Fogarty, seconded by Second Vice Chair Speakman. Chairman Hull, how do you
Yes.
vote?
Yes.
First Vice Chair Fogarty, how do you vote?
Yes.
Second Vice Chair Speakman, how do you vote?
Yes.
Speaker Shekarchi, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Kazarian, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Morales, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Price, how do you vote?
Hold on. What bill number is this? Sorry about
House Bill 5101.
that. Yes.
Representative Cardillo is present. There was a motion to pass House Bill 5101.
I vote yes.
There you are.
That completes the roll call vote. The motion moves.
Thank you. Let us now move to House Bill 5129. Make a motion that we move 5129
So
out of
moved.
committee. Been seconded by Vice Chair Speakman. Roll call vote.
Hold on.
House Bill 5129 was moved for passage. Chairman Hull, how do you vote?
Yes.
Chairman, First Vice Chair Fogarty, how do you vote?
Yes.
Second Vice Chair Speakman, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Cardillo, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Kazarian, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Morales, how do you vote?
He stepped out.
Representative Price, how do you vote?
1 second, please. What's the bill number?
It's 5129.
Could you come back to me, please?
Chair, Mr. Speaker, Speaker Shekarchi, how do you vote?
I vote yes, please.
Representative Price?
Yes, I'd vote yes. I just had to look it up, please, but thank you.
You're welcome. Your motion carries.
Okay, thank you. Okay. We now move to hold these bills that I'm going to present to you shortly. Hold for further studies. Hang on, please, and we will go. House bill presented by Representative Shekarchi, 5950. House resolution presented by Representative Speakman, 5953. House bill presented by Representative Place, 5495. House bill presented by Representative Perez, 5589. House bill presented by Representative Toban, 5634. House bill presented by Representative Milikowski, 5676. House bill presented by Representative Edwards, 5954. House bill presented by Representative Felipe, 5408. House bill presented by Representative Price, 5409. House bill presented by Representative O'Brien, 5410. House bill presented by Representative Place, 5426. House bill presented by Representative Cardillo, 5691. House bill presented by Representative Girardo, 5692. House bill Representative Handy, 5694. House bill by Representative McAtee, 5695. And House bill 5785. Is that right, my attorney?
I'm not sure, did you call 5953? No, I'm sorry, 5633.
No.
That's been postponed.
Okay, and 5816.
McNamara's 5816 by Representative McNamara to hold. Those are the bills for further. I moved.
I move that we hold the bills for further study.
Seconded. First Vice Chair Speakman, roll call vote.
Mr. Chair, that's, Representative Kennedy, did you announce my bill? I just wanted to make sure that
No,
you
we're
found it on the agenda.
It's on
Bill
the agenda,
number-
but that's going to be opened, and we'll speak on that shortly.
Oh, no, but what I'm going to say, I didn't hear you announce that that was one of the bills to be held, and I just wanted to make sure 6108 was amongst your list.
It's not on the list to be held.
Okay.
It's at the end. You see it under Mcnamara.
Yeah, Counselor, you told me that one?
That one's going to be for consideration.
Yeah, that one's going to be for consideration, Representative Kennedy.
Thank you.
5106, that's why it's not here. We're going to open up
6108.
6108. Does that answer that, Mr. Kennedy? Answer your question?
Thank you.
Thank you. Roll call vote.
There was a motion to hold for further study made by First Vice Chair Fogarty, seconded by Second Vice Chair Speakman, to hold for further study House Bill 5950, 5953, 5954, 5408, 5409, 5410, 5426, 5495, 5589, 5634, 5676, 5691, 5692, 5694, 5695, 5785, and 5816. Chairman Hull, is that your vote?
Correct, yes.
Hold on. 1 second, please.
We can come back to you. Move on.
First Vice Chair Fogarty, is that your vote?
Yes.
Second Vice Chair Speakman, is that your vote?
Yes.
Speaker Shekarchi, is that your vote?
Yes.
Representative Cardillo, is that your vote?
Yes.
Representative Kazarian, is that your vote?
Yes.
Representative Morales, is that your vote? Representative Price, is that your vote?
I'm not sure, was 5409 included in on that?
That is
Yes.
correct.
Okay, could we exempt that and not hold that for further study? And because it's kind of time sensitive for the new deadline for elderly to do their taxes.
We are going to hold the bill at this point.
Okay. Yes.
That completes the roll call vote.
Thank you. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let us go quick to Representative Speaker Shekarchi's Bill 5950, a House resolution creating special legislation commission to study the entire area of land use preservation and development for housing, environment, and regulation. I now ask Speaker Shekarchi for his presentation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, honorable members of the Housing Committee. I appreciate the opportunity to speak before you today. I'll be very brief. The bill is a study commission, but a very important one that was introduced last year, but due to COVID, as many pieces of legislation did not get time for consideration. The bill creates a study commission to review and look at all land use laws pertaining to environmental, zoning, preservation, production, development, affordable housing, regulation, and would report back to the House of Representatives within 1 year. It's a very broad-based commission. I will point out that we have not done this in over 30 years, and we have so many more pressing needs of today that were not existent 30 years ago. I look forward to creating a very collaborative board. There are several areas within the legislation that requires people who hold certain professional affiliations or experience. It's my idea to craft something that will get broad base of support, and hopefully we'll be able to move, come up with a final product a year from now. I want these hearings to be televised and transparent. I want a lot of public participation. I want to hear from all points of view, and I want to update our land use laws, because I think we can really move forward and look at affordable housing in particular and the environment. Those are two areas that have been neglected in the last 30 years of our land use planning. And with my goal to be enabling to help cities and towns and not to be punitive, to help them get to a point where they want to create cluster zoning, multifamily zoning. Those are just two areas that I'd like the commission to consider. That's the short of the bill. I'll be happy to answer any questions from any members of the committee.
Any questions for Speaker Shekarchi? Hearing none, I will go to phone calls. Andrew? Andrew Teitz?
Yes.
Welcome to the House Municipal Government. You have the floor.
Okay. Thank you. This is Andrew Teitz, T as in Thomas, EITZ. I'm an attorney, a land use attorney for the last 35 years, municipal solicitor to several towns, and a member of the American Institute of Certified Planners. And on behalf of myself and the Rhode Island chapter of the American Planning Association, we strongly support this bill for a new special legislative commission. As the speaker just indicated, it's been over 30 years since this was last done. I myself was a member of the previous commission in the 1990s and intimately involved in the drafting of the Zoning Enabling Act of 1991 and the Development Review Act of 1992. And those acts, together with the Comprehensive Planning Act of 1988 and the Low and Moderate Income Housing Act in its various iterations, significantly changed the landscape of land use legislation, which had been in place before then. Another 30 years has passed, and it's time to take a comprehensive and holistic look at the several land use statutes and update them today. The only specific question, we would like to suggest that perhaps there be more people from the trenches on this committee, zoning board members, planning board members, municipal planners, and solicitors who actually deal with this stuff every day, as well as all the interested private parties. We think it would be helpful to have either that as a broader commission or perhaps as technical advice to them. And we also think it would be helpful if the role of the state officials on the commission were clarified, whether they were voting members or there to provide technical staff and assistance or both. The one final thing I would like to say is I'm also signed up to testify on H5953, and I can save you a little time by saying now in connection with this one that I would just like to suggest the possibility that there doesn't need to be two separate study commissions on these overlapping issues.
Hang
The low and moderate
on for,
income.
1 second, sir.
Sure.
So you are now speaking on 5953, correct?
Well, I'm speaking on their relationship. Yes,
Okay.
I'm speaking on both of them because my comments on 5953 would be it should be combined in the same study commission with 5950. So I'm speaking on them both, that they relate to one another and if changes are made by one group of people to the Low and Moderate Income Housing Act without talking to and being the same people dealing with changes to the Zoning Enabling and Development Review Act, it's going to look like an automobile that was designed by two group of engineers, one from the front bumper and one from the back bumper, and neither one talked to one another. So I would suggest that maybe one committee, including the Low and Moderate Income Housing Act, be included in the same study committee rather than two separate study committees.
Very well. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Teitz. Any questions?
May I just clarify, the last part regarding the combining of the two committees is my own testimony and not approved official testimony of the Rhode Island chapter of the American Planning Association.
Thank you, Mr. Teitz. Any questions for Mr. Teitz? Okay, let us move to the next caller. Thank you, Mr. Teitz. Let's move to the next caller, Mr. Walsh.
May I just clarify the last part regarding combining the two?
You're on, Mr. Walsh, and welcome to the House Committee on Municipal Government and Housing. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Chairman. It's great to be with you and the members of the committee this afternoon. We'd like to thank, this is Bill Walsh on behalf of the Rhode Island Builders Association, here in strong support of the study commission being presented here in 5959. We certainly thank the Speaker and the leadership and all the members of the House for recognizing the importance of this review. It has been stated is long overdue, and with all the new emerging uses and competing priorities for different land use, both from our housing perspective, but as well as for all renewable energies and existing uses that we've all become accustomed with, it's great to see that there's a recognition of how all these different things impact each other, and it's critical to take a fresh look to understand, where we are today and where we want to plan for tomorrow. So we look forward to being engaged in this process. We're here to help be a resource for the commission and the members, and we thank you for putting this measure forward. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Any questions for Mr. Walsh? Hearing none. Thank you, Mr. Walsh. We'll move on to Jane Weidman, excuse me. Good afternoon, Jane. Welcome to the... You'll have her on the phone.
I'm here.
Oh, welcome. And you have
Thank
the
you.
floor. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman Hull and members of the committee. I am Jane Weidman. I am representing the Rhode Island chapter of the American Planning Association, and I am also the town planner in Charlestown. And I do support the establishment of this commission. The original Land Use Commission from the 1990s, chaired by Representative Wagon, really looms large in our state history, at least from the planner's perspective, because it led to the Comprehensive Planning Act and the Zoning and the Subdivision Enabling Acts, which I believe resulted in national recognition and acclaim. And at that time, there was a diverse group. I remember the developers were represented by a builder named Bob Seo. And there were a number of municipal representatives and planners and lawyers that drafted the actual legislation that 30 years later we all live by. And I can see that this new commission has a broad focus, and we welcome that. But specifically from the municipal planning perspective, our focus is on the 2 state laws that govern land development in Rhode Island. And the planners have actually been advocating the establishment of a land use commission over the past few years because of the raft of bills that come in every session, amending zoning procedures or amending some subdivision procedures. And we individually or as a group are reacting to these changes, often with an opposing position. We usually recognize the problem that is driving the proposed change, but often conclude that we have a better solution that is fair to everybody, and that includes the applicant or the developer, the board representing the community, and the neighbors or the general public. So the overriding concern that we have is to stop piecemeal changes and to bring all the stakeholders back to a working group to review and agree on the changes. And we do have a few strong policies that govern our approach, and one of the principal ones is local control over land use decisions. And whether a rural, suburban, or urban municipality, we want each community to control their own land use density. And we also understand that economic development comes in many forms, and that once something is built up, it's changed forever. So, therefore, my organization is specifically asking for 2 things. One, that the scope and the work product of the new commission be better defined, and while it must deal with the large and critical issues of affordable housing and planning for climate change, that one of the specific tasks be a wholesale look at the zoning law and the land development and subdivision law, and that this work be done by a technical committee that includes planners, board members, engineers, builders, environmentalists, and of course lawyers, and that those are the professionals that work with the regulations every day. And the larger policy issues relating to housing and the environment be reviewed by the larger group who can provide overall direction and of course address any number of other solutions to the big issues that we face, like infrastructure needs and adaptation to sea level rise and social equity. Everything is related, and every task that the individual members of this commission do will affect the others. So I hope that we can sit down together and recreate the magic of the past collaboration for this new era that we are living in, and we have a beautiful state and many challenges ahead, so we look forward to the successful work of this commission. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jane. Any questions for Jane? Hearing none. Thank you. We'll move on to Jed Thorpe. Welcome, Jed. Welcome to the House Committee on Municipal Government. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Jed Thorpe. I'm the Advocacy Coordinator at Save the Bay, and our mission is to improve and protect Narragansett Bay, and therefore we obviously pay special attention to what happens on the bay and the surrounding coastline. But we also care about what happens not just to the bay itself, but the watershed as a whole, which stretches all the way from Worcester, Mass. Over to Brockton, and includes most of the land in the state of Rhode Island. And what happens on that land, including the loss of forest and wetlands, eventually impacts the health of Narragansett Bay. So for us, issues like land use and development are also very much environmental issues as well. We commend the Speaker and the Majority Leader for recognizing the interconnection of issues like environmental protection, land use, development, and social justice, and there certainly is a need to look at those in a more comprehensive and holistic way. The charge and the mandate of the commission is quite broad, and whomever facilitates it will have their work cut out for them for sure. And to make its work as productive as possible, we ask the sponsors to reconsider the membership of the commission to ensure that there's enough knowledge on each topic to enable meaningful discussion. And secondly, to make sure that the membership is diverse enough in terms of geography, community, socioeconomics, and race. Lastly, we hope that the Commission's work will be rooted in the General Assembly's duty to protect the natural resources of the state for all citizens as specified in Article 1, Section 17 of the Rhode Island Constitution. Again, we thank the sponsors for their attention to these important issues, and Save the Bay is prepared to assist in whatever way is most helpful. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Thor. Any questions for Mr. Thor? Seeing none, we'll move on to Maria Mack. Welcome. Let's get her on the phone first. Welcome, Maria, to the House. Are you on? Okay. Not yet, but after this one. Please bear with us. A little technical difficulty, but we'll get to you. Maria, please hang on the line.
Okay.
She's here. Welcome. Welcome to Municipal Government. You have the floor.
Thank you. My name is Maria Mack. Good afternoon. Chair Hall, committee members, and Leader Shekarchi, thank you for this opportunity to comment and to support this bill, creating a special legislative commission to study the entire area of land use, preservation, housing, environment, and regulation. I have been a member of the Planning Board in South Kingstown for 24 years and speak from the perspective and background of the land use planning and policy development process. This comprehensive review of land use and associated regulatory process is vital at this time. Our size and population density have intensified the need to better address affordable housing, equity and inclusion, environmental resilience and protection, and smart, sustainable growth. A holistic look at our land use area, factors, process, and regulation will serve to focus on the many impacts to the people and communities of Rhode Island. As you are all well aware, land use affects how and where people live, work, and hopefully play. It is a significant factor in public health and well-being with a very broad range of consequences. I would respectfully ask that those experienced planning professionals who interpret and administer land use regulations on a daily basis be included from varied locations within Rhode Island, urban, suburban, and rural cities and towns. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Maria. Any questions for Maria? Okay. Seeing none, First Vice Chair Speakman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have several folks who have submitted written testimony, all in favor of this legislation. Carol Ventura from Rhode Island Housing, Meredith Brady from the Division of Statewide Planning, Brenda Clement from Housing Works Rhode Island, Meg Kerr from Audubon Society, Topher Hamblett from Save the Bay, Jeff Davis from APA-RI, Kenneth Filarski from Filarski Architects, Brian Daniels from the Rhode Island League of Cities and Towns, Courtney Nicolato from United Way. All in favor. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Hearing no more questions on that bill, this concludes House Bill 5950. Thank you. We now move to House Bill 5676, and we're moving to this bill in the interest of time for a doctor that has to be on a flight. So we will now move to House Bill 5676 by Representative Malakowski, an act relating to the taxation, levy, and assessment of local taxes, changes the tax clarification and cable television assets. Representative Malakowski. Okay, we have Dr. Talbi on the phone. How are you, Doctor? And please excuse me if I...
I'm very good, thank you.
Okay, you have the floor, and welcome to the House Municipal Government.
Thank you very much. Can I start?
Yes, you can.
Thank you. So, well, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak at this hearing, Mr. Chairman, and I really appreciate it. My name is Edinaldo Tebaldi. I serve as a professor of economics at Bryant University and also hold a PhD in economics from the University of New Hampshire. As per request of Cox Communications, I conducted a data-driven assessment of the economic contribution of Cox Communications to the economy of our state. My analysis shows that Cox continues to grow its businesses, its business operations here, and has made significant investments in capital infrastructure that allowed it to expand services and capabilities in Rhode Island. From 2016 to 2019, Cox invested just under $220 million in Rhode Island through infrastructure upgrades. My work also shows that Cox adds jobs and creates income in Rhode Island. In 2019, Cox supported 2,178 jobs in Rhode Island, including 745 direct jobs at Cox and 1,433 jobs that were created indirectly or induced in other sectors of our economy. My analysis also shows that Cox supported the creation of $131.4 million in labor income in 2019. And what's also very important is that the average compensation or wages of Cox employees was $82,884 on average, which is 57% higher than the average wage of workers across all industries in Rhode Island. The work also shows that Cox generates tax revenues for both state governments, the state government and municipalities. In 2019, Cox supported the generation of $35.6 million in tax revenues for both state and local governments. That number includes $13.4 million in property taxes, which includes $7 million in direct Cox real estate payments. In addition, Cox also contributed to generate $10.6 million in sales taxes, $3.6 million in personal income taxes, and $1.5 million in corporate taxes, among other taxing fees. To conclude, my assessment indicates that Cox capital investment is very important to support jobs in our state. Projections shared with me show that Cox plans to expand its capabilities and is targeting to add $197.5 million in capital investments from 2020 to 2023 in our state. So these investments are very important to expand the infrastructure and capability of Cox here in Rhode Island, and also improve the quality of the services to both residents and businesses. And that certainly will help to maintain the jobs here and add more jobs in the future. So to finalize, it is my opinion that when we see inequitable tax structures, like the one that this bill under consideration seeks to remedy, and they certainly hinder investments in infrastructure and hinder growth from local companies like Cox. Thank you for the time and opportunity to speak. I appreciate it, and I'm willing to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Any questions for the doctor?
Yes, Representative Fogarty.
Representative Fogarty, please.
Well, thank you for your testimony. It seemed a little bit one-sided, I have to say, about Cox. So since you seem to know the numbers so well, what amount of tax dollars is going to be pulled away from the municipalities and cities with this change in tax structure?
I was asked to estimate the contribution of Cox to the economy. I was not asked to calculate how much impacts would be eliminated by this change in legislation. What I do know is that the proposed legislation is supposed to address something that is unaligned with a modern economy. But I do not have estimates of how much impacts will be eliminated by this tax proposal.
I have a feeling they would be significant for the local municipalities and towns. So I need a little bit more research on that before I could support this bill. But that's my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Representative Morales.
Doctor, how would this tax reclassification, which appears to essentially be a tax cut for Cox, actually help our consumers, most of which whom subscribe to cable tend to be older demographics?
Communication is extremely important in what we call the new economy. It is extremely important to businesses. So to operate, they have to have access to broadband internet access. The same to residents. We can think of our children now to take classes, they need access to internet. So to me, broadband access is a very important strategic piece of infrastructure that we need, especially as the economy continues to rely more and more on new technologies. So all players in our economy benefit by having better services. And by taxing or actually taxing businesses that provide those services in some way that is unaligned with taxes in other sectors of the economy does not help the economy. So, for instance, if we allow a computer to be depreciated on a particular period of time, why we should demand another tax structure to tax a component that's very similar to a computer, but intended to deliver high-speed internet to both businesses and our residents. So my point here is that we should align tax structure. And I don't see that this as a benefit to Cox, but rather a benefit to consumers and to businesses in our state.
Thank you. I just want to state for the record, similar to Vice Chair Fogarty, I would need more information on how this tax reclassification plan would impact our state and our municipalities in terms of tax revenue before I could support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Doc, any more questions for the doctor? Vice Chair.
Dr. Tibaldi, I just want to ask again the question that Rep. Morales asked. So would the ratepayers save money as a result of this tax cut for Cox?
Well, I think that's not the right question.
But do you have an answer to the question?
No, I don't have an answer to the question, and that would demand some calculations of the benefits.
That's okay. I just wanted to know if you had an answer to that question. I appreciate it.
No, I don't have the answer to that question.
And Chairman?
Fogarty, yes.
Jesus Christ.
Chairman, it's Rep. Fogarty again.
Yes. Representative Fogarty.
The other point about this is that I would be careful. Most towns have like towers that, there's some type of financing through towns with Cox and Cox Communications. And I would think that that is some of the assets that the towns get for relay stations and so forth in their municipalities and cities. So I would be cautious about that loss of income to the cities and towns. Thank you.
Thanks for presenting it to the committee. Any more questions for the doctor? Let us move on to the next call. Joel?
Thank you very much.
Thank you, doctor. Welcome, Joel.
Yes, hello.
Welcome to the House Municipal Government and Housing. You have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Chairman Hull and members of the committee. My name is Joel Rubinson, and I represent Cox Communications. Thank you for allowing me to share testimony on House Bill 5676, that was introduced by Representative Marzlikowski. We have also submitted written testimony that the clerk will have on file. The legislation before you seeks to change tax classifications for cable television assets in the following ways. Rhode Island's property tax depreciation schedules do not reflect changing technology in the cable industry and in Cox's network. For example, cable headends, which is the portion of the network that distributes our content to a metro area, are filled with little black boxes that look very much like computer servers. In fact, in Cox's Atlanta headend, it's also one of the company's data centers, and it's virtually impossible to identify which components of that center support the headend versus the data center. We're also meeting our customers' bandwidth needs by pushing fiber closer to their homes in place of coax. Naturally, this shortens the life of coax cable and the electronics that are needed to power this equipment. Finally, to stay competitive, we're required to frequently update the set-top box equipment that interfaces with our customers. We're living in an Alexa type of world, and so we've had to modify our set-top box to make it voice-activated. Furthermore, as programming moves to the cloud, the day is fast approaching in which set-top boxes will no longer be needed. Similar to head-end equipment, Cox's CP equipment is also essentially a computer. This is evidenced by the exhibit that we previously submitted that shows both pieces of equipment side by side and supports the fact that there's only negligible difference between them. Don't know about you, but when I look at them, I can identify which one's a computer versus which one is a CPE. They're just very similar. In order for Rhode Island's depreciation tables to reflect the functional lives of cable equipment, we believe that coax equipment should be moved to Class 2 and that head-end and CP equipment should be treated like computer equipment and should be moved to Class 1. In addition to better matching Cox's depreciable lives to its equipment's functional lives, we also think that Rhode Island's depreciable lives are excessive in relation to other U.S. states. In the Northeast, Connecticut, Delaware, New Jersey, New York, Virginia do not tax CPE, and Massachusetts taxes CPE over approximately 5 years, whereas in Rhode Island, the life is 8 to 9 years. Additionally, across Cox's multi-state footprint, CPE is depreciated over approximately 5 years, and none of these states depreciate CPE equipment for more than 7 years. Thank you once again, Mr. Chairman, and I'm happy to answer any questions the committee may have.
Any questions? For Joel, any questions? Seeing none. Thomas Kane he's opposed, Town of North Providence. We will now move to Tim Wilkinson. Tim? Good afternoon, Tim. You have the floor. Good afternoon, Tim, and welcome to the House Municipal Government and Housing. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon to you and to the esteemed members of the committee. My name is Tim Wilkerson, and I'm president of the New England Cable and Telecommunications Association, or NECTA. NECTA is a regional trade association representing substantially all private cable broadband providers. In Rhode Island, we represent Cox Communications. I appreciate the opportunity to outline our support for this pro-consumer tax equity legislation. You and your colleagues have worked tirelessly to create a hospitable environment to attract and retain jobs and grow the state's economy through a more competitive and equitable tax code. The purpose of H5676 is to ensure that tax policy on broadband technology is imposed similarly to surrounding states. This reform legislation will ensure that consumers are given financial relief from a burdensome and outdated tax on equipment like remote controls. Prior to 2018, certain broadband technology was classified as a Class 1 depreciable life instead of a Class 2 designation. The previous approach to taxing this technology aligned Rhode Island with the majority of states. With the changes enacted in 2018, today's tax policies on broadband equipment will be expensive for consumers and businesses, have lifespans that are too long, and do not reflect the technology's useful life. As a result, current property tax depreciation schedules are outdated and do not reflect ever-evolving broadband technology. By reversing this long-standing tax approach, it places an onerous burden on basic equipment and on components spanning the industry's networks. To be clear, we're talking about taxes on remote controls and other basic broadband components. With this reclassification of equipment, Rhode Island is an extreme outlier for taxes on technology. Rhode Island is the only state that taxes in-home equipment like modems and set-top boxes for 8 years. That policy stands in stark contrast to surrounding states like Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, Connecticut, New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware, which have zero tax on equipment like remote controls. Just as striking, Rhode Island's new tax is literally double the tax of any of the other 13 states where Cox operates. In a state that has worked so hard to phase out its onerous car tax, there is a law on the books taxing remote controls. Furthermore, the 8-year depreciation schedule applies to modems sitting in your constituents' homes or small businesses that will likely be swapped out every 3 years or less. 8 years is an incompatible tax regime for equipment being replaced no more than every 2 to 3 years to support new product offerings such as embedded apps like Netflix or Amazon Prime and to empower increasing broadband speeds. With a lifespan of 2 to 3 years, imposing 8 years of tax depreciation on modems is a flawed policy which will ultimately hurt consumers. This bill simply reverses the tax regime to a pre-2018 law, bringing equity to consumers' tax burden as compared to surrounding states. By doing so, Rhode Island will once again have a fair and updated tax depreciation schedule. This is a pro-consumer reform bill because, like any inequitable tax, it eventually gets passed on to the consumer. But not only will it adversely impact consumers, but it will also negatively impact internet providers' ability to invest in critical infrastructure at a time when broadband speeds and network reliability are more important than ever. In a state where tax reform resulted in sustained pre-pandemic job growth and high-profile business expansions by multinational corporations like Infosys, Virgin Pulse, and General Electric, we ask that you further reform the tax code by passing this bill and ending this remote control tax and taxation on other equipment. Thank you.
Tim, thank you. I hear you loud and clear, but I've been arguing this a couple of years, that I've put in a bill that you charge us for these set-top boxes that are in my home, and I pay a fee on my remote control. And I always say, why can't I buy it? Why? It's just a piece of equipment that's in my home. And your argument always has been, well, it's ours, it's our technology, and it's okay. So now you, on the other hand, are getting taxed on a piece of property that I'm paying for that's in my home. You can't have it both ways.
I believe that's you, Mr. Chairman.
That is correct.
I would take it a little different tact and maybe review it in a different way. Why? It makes a lot of sense for the companies to continue to own that technology versus you. If you recall, and I don't remember what year it was, it may have been 2015 or 2016, President Obama, in his State of the Union address, actually raised this issue and said that he wanted to empower consumers to be able to buy those set-top boxes. And that set off, as you can imagine, at the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, a firestorm as the independent quasi-state agency, federal agency that oversees this industry. I can tell you that the reason why that has not changed is because the industry worked with those federal regulators under a Democratic administration to say that the technology embedded, and I mentioned it once in my testimony, but the technology embedded in those set-top boxes are so advanced and constantly being updated in a couple different ways. I mentioned the third-party apps. You recall probably 5 years ago or so, if you were a Cox customer, you did not have the ability to be able to seamlessly say into your talking remote Netflix, and that Netflix would just appear, or Amazon Prime, or Hulu, or Pandora. All of that technology has evolved literally in the last 5-6 years and has been able to be updated through those set-top boxes that if you owned it, you wouldn't have been able to be accessed by the company remotely, wouldn't have been able to be embedded, those apps wouldn't have been able to be embedded because they wouldn't have ownership over that technology. At 3 o'clock in the morning, it's usually between 3 and 4 a.m., constantly those set-top boxes are being updated through software patches that are happening throughout our networks. And it's something that we never see because most of us, thank God, are asleep. But those updates seamlessly happen. And if it wasn't for the ownership of that hardware being with the companies, even though you're paying a fee on it, and I understand that frustration. That kind of technology, that kind of innovation, those updates just wouldn't occur if the marketplace was as you described it. And I think that it's very telling that here was the President of the United States, Democrat, saying, we want to do this. And his democratically controlled FCC, after speaking with industry, after understanding this evolution of innovation and technology, decided against that. So I understand where you're coming from, and I hope that sheds a different angle, different light on that topic, because I can understand a consumer's frustration if not they didn't realize all of that's happening behind the scenes, that it never impacts their life, but it actually improves their user experience.
Tim, I want to say thank you, but for the record, he was a damn good Democrat, the president.
Mr. Chairman, I couldn't agree more.
Thank you. Okay, I have to, any questions for Tim? Nothing? We have to go back to another call for Thomas. Thomas Kane, are you on the line? You have the floor, Thomas. Thomas Kane, are you on the line?
Yes, I am, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much for providing me the opportunity to testify in opposition to House Bill 5676. Just to make the committee aware, I am the Director of Taxation for the town of North Providence, meaning that I perform the role of tax assessor and collector for the town. I am a former town councilor for the town of Cumberland, and I am the chairman of the Personal Property Committee for the Rhode Island Association of Assessing Officers. I'd like to start just by reiterating that, I strongly oppose the proposed changes that are coming before you in this bill. We have a lot of issues with what's being proposed. We have a lot of issues with the telecommunication companies on across the board. Our first issue with the communication companies is that they do not file a correct annual return form, which is required to be filed with the local tax office on an annual basis. We have tried to ask them for the information that we need to be able to accurately assess all of their equipment that they have in our different municipalities. We've been at this for just about 10 years at this point, probably longer, which would predate my time, working on it. But we've never really gotten anywhere. We've never really been able to have a good conversation with any of the telecommunication companies that service Rhode Island to try to get them to file the correct amount of assets or the correct cost of the assets that they have in our municipalities. That puts us as assessors at a huge disadvantage when it comes to assessing their equipment. For example, they've talked a lot about the set-top boxes. Set-top boxes are the cable boxes that you would have in your home. They've made the case that they do have computer components in them, but essentially they are not computers. So the assessors group really feels as though this equipment should not be taxed or depreciated at the rate of a computer, because essentially it is not a computer. It is a set-top box that provides cable television to your home. The other distinction I'd like to make with that, that set-top box, is that is a piece that piece of equipment is an income-producing piece of equipment. It's very different than the computer that a business might have that just allows them to operate their business. This set-top box produces a monthly income for the telecommunications company. And, cable charges and the bills that people receive for these boxes is very high compared to the amount or the cost of that actual box. The other big part of this is that this change would be very, very significant to every single city and town in the state of Rhode Island. I know from my community, we would stand to lose about $115,000 in our personal property tax if this were to pass. And North Providence is not, we do not have the bulk of the assets from these telecommunications companies. I can't even imagine what the city of Providence, the city of Warwick, Cranston, Pawtucket, what they would be on the hook to lose if these, changes were successful. I thank you for the opportunity to speak in opposition to this. I'm more than happy to answer any questions that the committee might have. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Thomas. You cleared it up quite clearly for me. First Vice Chair, any questions? First Vice Chair Spickman.
We have written testimony from several people on H5676. Warren Town Manager Kate Michaud, Warren Finance Director Feng Chen, and Warren Tax Assessor Christopher Leadham sent a letter expressing pretty much what we just heard from the last witness. They are against. We have written testimony from Timothy Wilkerson of Northeast Cable, from whom we also heard from Joel Rubenstein from Cox, and from Dr. Tibaldi, all of whom are for. And then Neil Dupuy from the City of Warwick, Sarah Frew from East Providence, Elise Perret from City of Providence are all against. Thank you.
Thank you. And that will conclude H5676. Let's move on to...
Mr. Chair?
Yes. I'm sorry.
I would like the record to reflect my attendance. I was at another meeting and my genie bottle was not functioning, so I couldn't be in both places at the same time. So I would like my vote for the first two items to be in the affirmative, and also to hold all that was asked to be held for further study, my vote for that as well.
Thank you. So noted.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Representative
Mr. Chairman, Representative Morgan,
yes,
would you
I see you now.
do the same thing for me?
Received.
Yeah, Representative Hull, or Chairman Hull, I'd like to also be on the record just voting all items today for further study.
Representative Morales also received. Okay. Thank you, and that concludes 5676. We now move on to Representative Kennedy. 6108.
Mr. Chair, Committees in General of the House. This is a bill that the town of Westerly has requested. They're looking to hold a townwide referendum on a school bond issue bill, which this committee previously approved. They want to now hold this bond issue in conjunction with that, with the approval of the electors to issue an amount not to exceed $11 million in general obligation bonds and notes. It would specifically be used for the construction of road and sidewalk infrastructure improvements, as well as water line improvements in the town. The town council did pass a resolution in support of this construction to put this before the voters. So ultimately, it would be the town voters that would have that opportunity to move forward with this in May and vote on this in a townwide referendum, along with the previously approved bond issue bill that Representative Chairman Azzanaro had sponsored. I did provide to the committee a copy of the town council resolution, which I believe was uploaded as well to the General Assembly website for the attachments relating to the legislation on the docket today.
Yeah. Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Kennedy? Okay. At this time, I make a motion that we move this bill out of committee.
I second.
Second.
I ask we have a roll call vote. Clerk?
There was a motion made by Chairman Hull to move House Bill 6108 for passage, seconded by Second Vice Chair Speakman. Chairman Hull, how do you vote?
Yes.
Second Vice Chair
Chairman, it's very
Fogarty?
hard to hear. There's something with somebody's microphone.
If we could, if you're not using your mics, please shut them off. Thank you.
Thank you.
Second Vice Chair Speakman, how do you vote?
Yes.
I'm sorry, First Vice Chair Fogarty, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Cardillo, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Kazarian, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Morales, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Morgan, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Price, how do you vote? Let's see, he's gone. Representative Williams, how do you vote?
Yes.
That completes the roll call vote. Your motion passes.
Thank you. We need to move.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members.
Thank you very much, Chairman Kennedy. We move to two Senate bills that, we'll go with the first one first, Senate 5-2. Enact validating and ratifying amendments to the Home Rule Charter to the Town of Coventry. I believe we had a duplicate of this. Is that correct?
That would be House Bill 5101, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
I make a motion to move Senate Bill 52.
Has there been a motion? Any second?
Second.
Seconded.
Roll call vote, Madam Clerk.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. I thought you said Senate Bill 50. It's
Senate Bill 52.
52. Okay, so House Bill 5101 is a dupe for 50.
For 50, that is correct. For 52, right?
No, for 50.
So, but we're on Senate Bill 52.
Okay.
Correct.
Yeah, we don't have that bill until the corresponding House wanted to make tonight.
Okay. Okay, so we are now on 52 Senate bill, and we got to vote to move it out of committee.
I made a motion to move Senate Vote 52 for passage.
Okay, so 52 is the one.
I'll second it again.
Does not have the.
Correct. Thank you. And there's a second. On 52, roll call vote, please. Senate 5-2.
With respect to Senate Bill 52, there was a motion by Representative Williams for passage, seconded by Representative Fogarty. Chairman Hull, how do you vote?
Yes.
First Vice Chair Fogarty, how do you vote?
Yes.
Second Vice Chair Speakman, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Cardillo, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Kazarian, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Morales, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Morgan, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Williams, how do you vote?
Yes.
That completes the roll call vote. Your motion passes.
Thank you. We'll now move to Senate 50, that has a duplicate of H5101. Make a motion?
Motion made for Senate 50 for passage.
Second. Yeah.
It's been moved and seconded?
Mr. Chair, may I approach you for just a moment?
Sure. Okay. It's been moved and seconded.
May I ask who seconded that motion?
Rep. Kazarian.
Oh, second. There was a motion made for Senate Bill 50. Motion made by Representative Williams for passage, seconded by Representative Kazarian. Chairman Hull, how do you vote?
Yes.
First Vice Chair Fogarty, how do you vote?
Yes.
Second Vice Chair Speakman, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Cardillo, how do you vote? Yes. Representative Kazarian, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Morales, how do you vote?
Yes.
Representative Morgan, how do you vote?
Yes.
And Representative Williams, how do you vote?
Yes.
That completes the roll call vote. Your motion carries.
Okay, just for the record, S52, there was no testimony for or against. And also Senate Bill 50, there was no motion for or against, just to put it on record. Okay, that concludes that. Representative Bella Wilkinson, we will go to your bill. We have her. Take it away.
This is Bill 5785 by Chairwoman Bella Wilkinson, an act relating to taxation, veterans exemption. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the Municipal Committee. House Bill 5785 is on veterans exemptions, and this act would extend the veterans exemption from property tax to any member who served in uniform during the Cold War between 1947 through 1991, even if they did not serve in a declared war or conflict. So just to give you a little bit of history, for those of you who may not know, the Cold War started at the end of the Second World War in 1947, and it went through the end of 1991. Rhode Island State defines a veteran as any man or woman who has been engaged heretofore, is now, or may hereafter be engaged in the active service of the armed forces of the United States with a minimum of 90 days of active duty time served during any declared war, undeclared war, Korean campaign, conflict in Vietnam, or any war, campaign, or conflict which the armed forces of the United States of America actively engages in, and for which service a campaign ribbon or an expeditionary medal was earned. So that's what we currently use as a definition. And I wanted to tell you that thanks to Chairwoman McAtee and one of her constituents who brought this up to her, what I have come to find out is that this definition has a disparate impact on Cold War peacetime veterans, and especially female veterans. On June 12th of 1948, President Truman signed into law the Women's Armed Services Integration Act. And this act allowed women to serve as regular and permanent members of the armed forces in the Army, Navy, Marines, Coast Guard, and the Air Force. Unfortunately, that same federal law implemented the combat exclusion policy, which excluded women from all combat positions. So you can see that there is a tension between how Rhode Island defines a veteran, because it embraces, in essence, combat, or those who served in theater or during the time of combat, excluding those individuals who served during peacetime or were not in a combat situation. And by definition, up until January of 2013, the Secretary of Defense, Leon Panetta, rescinded the ban on women serving in ground combat units. He set forth a plan to implement the policy change, but unfortunately that policy change did not embrace the way states were defining veterans. And so House Bill 5785 seeks to take care of a problem that was initiated or began to be taken care of or looked at 8 years ago by Leon Panetta. Now, we have the authority to do that because we have control in the state over what state benefits we provide or extend to our veterans. And I remind many of you that 2 years ago, this House of Representatives had taken care of our gay veterans who had been discharged based on sexual orientation with a service characterized as dishonorable or less than honorable. And we removed that and said that we wanted to make sure that those veterans who had served honorably and but for their sexual orientation were discredited by the armed services. I'm asking this committee and eventually our House to look at the disparate impact on female veterans, especially those who served during the Cold War and during peacetime, because through no choice of their own, they were excluded from combat, and yet our state used combat as a way to define who a veteran was, who was worthy of getting state benefits. I'm ready for any questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Are there any questions from the committee?
I have one. Representative McAtee.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, members of the committee. And thank you, Representative Bella Wilkins, for sponsoring this legislation. Chairwoman Bella Wilkins and myself have conversed on this many times. It came to my attention through a constituent of mine who is waiting to speak to this legislation. She served in active duty between somewhere in the 1980s to the 90s. She was honorably discharged. She was ready to serve, ready to go into the war, and she feels that she's being, it's unfair that she's unable to get the veterans exemption from the town of Narragansett. I believe she's on the line. I also want to say that we have a letter from the Rhode Island Veterans Association signed by Kasim Yarn, who is in favor of this legislation. So I ask the committee to give this serious consideration. As Camille said, many women in the past who were in active duty with the military are unable to get the veterans exemption because they were prohibited in many cases from serving in a conflict or a war for this country, but they were ready, willing, and able to serve their country. So I ask this committee, please fix this. This is a good bill, and women should get every benefit that the men get for serving in the military and not be left out because the military didn't see them as equals. So I implore you to consider this bill. Thank you very much, Chairman and members of the committee.
Thank you, Chairwoman McEntee. Are there any other questions or comments from the committee? We have one witness on the phone, Lisa Barbosa. Go ahead, Lisa. Hi, Lisa. This is this is Second Vice Chair Speakman from the House Committee on Municipal Government and Housing. You have our attention on H 5785. Please proceed.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I wish I could see you and be there. My name is Lisa Berry Barbosa. I'm a Rhode Island resident for 23 years. I'm an officer of the Federal Reserve Bank, Boston. I'm a U.S. Army veteran. I enlisted in the Army in 1985. I served an 8-year contract, honorably discharged in 1993. My MOS training was 94 Bravo. I'm an E4 medical specialist, and I'm a recipient of the GI Bill with the split option status of active duty in the summer while I was training and a reservist while I was in school in college. I am a recipient of the GI Bill and bonuses for medical field. They were looking for people who had some college background, female, and it was during peacetime. I made sacrifices every summer. I didn't join any family holidays, picnics, weddings, funerals, baby showers. I was ready, able, and willing to call for duty at any given time during my 8-year contract. In the state of Rhode Island, as a veteran, I can buy a vanity plate, a veteran's vanity plate. I can get 10% off of a meal at George's on Veterans Day, but the tax exemption extending to veterans for property tax is not extended to me. This is an issue of equality. I feel minimized and devalued because I served my country as a patriot, but I didn't serve during a war or a conflict. And I told my story to Representative McEntee. She was kind enough to listen, and that's why we're here today.
Thank you for your testimony and for your service. Are there any questions from the committee?
No, just status,
Okay.
timing on status.
All right, thank you.
Representative Speakman, if I might.
Yes, of course, please go ahead.
We have the caller on the phone. I know that she was asked to serve in the place of a man that was sent to a conflict at the time. I don't know if it was Desert Storm. She would know better, but so she was sent to replace him at a base where he was sent off to serve in the conflict. So I just wanted to make that clear. That's what she explained to me, and she could give you more information if needed.
That's correct. Because of my reserve status, you could be called into active duty at any time, not just for training purposes. And I was called to take the place of somebody in Texas who went and performed their duty at Desert Storm. And during that conflict, it was during the time that I was still active in the military during the 8-year contract.
Thank you very much for sharing your story with us. Members of the committee, any other questions? Thank you very much. We have.
You're welcome.
Thank you. We have two written testimony, one from Sarah Frew, the East Providence tax assessor who opposes the bill, and one from Kasim Yan, as Representative McEntee said, from the Department of Veterans Affairs for Rhode Island, who supports the bill. Any other questions? Nope. Then that closes the testimony on and consideration of H5785. Thank you, Representative Ella Wilkinson.
Thank you. Don't go anywhere, Representative McEntee. We move to your bill, 5693, an act relating to towns and cities zoning ordinances. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, members of the committee. This act would increase the per unit fee for affordable single-family homes to $75,000 and allow municipalities to transfer in lieu payments upon receipt or within 10 years. Now, the current legislation, as many of you know, especially Vice Chair Speakman, on inclusionary zoning, and the current legislation for inclusionary zoning may provide that affordable housing must, one, be built on site or utilize one of more alternative methods. Another method is off-site construction or rehabilitation. A third type is the payment of a fee in lieu of the construction or provision of affordable housing units. So what this addresses is the payment in lieu of, and all we did is, if you go to page 2 of the legislation, on line 10, you'll see that we increased the minimum amount, that payment that could be made in lieu of actually building the affordable housing. So this provides, it was $40,000, we've increased it to $75,000, because after conversations with my planning board and Representative Speakman, who's very involved in housing, as we know, affordable housing, we felt that 40 was not enough money to build any kind of housing. Even if that's the minimum amount that you have to pay to do an in lieu payment, 40,000 isn't enough. So we increased that to 75,000. And then on line 16, same page, 16 and 17, page 2, the municipality shall maintain a local affordable housing board to oversee the funds in the restricted accounts and shall allocate the funds within, it was 2 years, we want to do 10 years. And the reason we want to increase this amount is because 2 years is not enough time for the city or town to come up with a plan on how to use the funds locally. And so for these reasons, it's not, most cities and towns don't even bother using it. They don't use this alternative. We think it's a viable alternative if we upgrade the time that the town has to collect the money and keep the money. So if you get 40,000 on one unit, you may need to collect 4, 5, 6 donations of 40,000 before you can actually do anything with it. So we're saying up to 75, and many cities and towns like the ones that I come from, Narragansett, South Kingstown, you can't build anything 40,000. And then as you go to line 21 through 22 on page 2, it dictates that the town has the choice to transfer the in lieu payments promptly upon receipt or within a 2-year period. After once the 2-year period hits, and they haven't spent the money, they have to make a choice that it either goes to Housing Resource Commission or the Rhode Island Housing. They no longer can keep the money. So we see this increasing that again to 10 years. It gives the city and towns time to actually put a project together. I mean, I'm willing to amend if that's what this committee wants to do. You know, we picked 10 years as a number. I suppose we could do lower. If someone, you know, as far as the 40,000 to 75,000, I think that's still moderate because housing, as we all know, it's very expensive to build anything these days. But with that, I'll take any questions, and I know we have some experts like Representative Speakman, who's on this committee, and I have my Vice Chair of the Planning Board is ready to testify. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of the committee.
Thank you. H5695. We have on the phone Jennifer Hawkins from One Neighborhood Builders. Jennifer, you have the floor, and welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman Hall and committee members. Thank you for taking public testimony today. I'm Jennifer Hawkins, Executive Director of One Neighborhood Builders. For those of you who aren't familiar with our nonprofit, we develop affordable housing and engage neighbors across Greater Providence to cultivate safe, healthy, and vibrant communities. And actually, by the end of this year, we will have developed 627 affordable homes and nearly 60,000 square feet of community space. So, well, first of all, thank you very much for all sitting inside on this gorgeous Friday afternoon. I am testifying in support of Bill 5695, the fee in lieu legislation. Right now, it stands at $40,000 a unit if a developer elects to not build an affordable home when required to for inclusionary zoning or using a comprehensive permit. Increasing it to $75,000 a unit is very smart and really kind of keeps pace with the calculation of the difference between how much you can sell an affordable home for and how much it costs. And by increasing it to $75,000, you're going to be able to have a greater amount of money in the Affordable Housing Trust to do more good work. I also just want to take a moment to thank Speaker Shekarchi, Leader Blazewski, and Representative Speakman for their public commitment to make housing the top priority for the Rhode Island House of Representatives. I wholeheartedly agree and was pleased to take part in the Speaker's press conference last week. So I'm also just testifying in support of Bill number 5953, establishing a low mod income housing commission. Should that legislation be approved, I'd be honored to serve in this commission and lend One Neighborhood Builders' expertise to the effort of increasing supply of affordable housing in the state. Thank you for listening to my testimony this afternoon.
Thank you, Ms. Hawkins. Any questions? Let us move to Maria Mack. She's in support. Maria, are you on the line? Hang on one second, please. Welcome, Maria. Welcome, Maria.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Hull, members of the committee, Representatives McEntee and Speakman. I appreciate this opportunity to comment. The fee in lieu of is unfortunately a largely unused technique that can be utilized in the production of affordable housing. It can be of particular value on sites that are constrained or marginal due to unique characteristics such as steep slopes or environmental issues. If a community opts in, it allows an applicant to pay a fee per lot that is transferred to a local housing fund to be used for the production of affordable housing, generally in partnership with a nonprofit housing organization. Currently, there are a few disincentives to doing so, which is unfortunate. One is the timeline allowed for collection of funds, which is limited to a 2-year time period. The second is the fee per lot, which ranges from $40,000 to $75,000 in various communities. The fee is not based on any current real estate market values. For example, South Kingstown is at $40,000. Allowing flexibility for a longer time frame, as it can take more than 2 years to generate sufficient funds to purchase land and build housing, and a flat rate of $75,000 will make it a more useful technique which can create greater affordable housing opportunities. Projects that partner with nonprofit housing organizations, such as you heard earlier, should be more strongly encouraged, as they tend to build 100% affordable units per project rather than the 20 to 25% realized through other means. It is worth noting that these partnership projects tend to target the area median income of 80% or lower, which benefits those in need much more so than the higher threshold of 100 to 120% area median income. I am aware that a bill exists, House Bill 5953, to establish a special legislative commission to study the Low Mod Income Housing Act, which of course I support, as other speakers have. Thank you.
Any more questions?
Speaker, Chairman.
Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Morgan. Representative Morgan, you have the floor.
Yeah, I'm trying to understand the issue here. So I'm looking on the computer and into Rhode Island law, so 4553-3. And there is a formula already for determining what the fee in lieu is. Does this $75,000 that you're suggesting that we raise it to can comply? And it also sets a minimum of $40,000, but there is a formula that's supposed to be determined annually. And I'm just wondering if anybody has taken the time to look at that formula and see if the $75,000 adheres to that. And then the second question I have is, I am assuming that this fee then is added to the cost of the affordable home. So doesn't it, if we raise it too high, doesn't that defeat the purpose of having affordable homes to begin with?
To answer your questions, there is a formula that is used. It's a little complicated, and it's not based on what it actually costs to build a home. And if you look at there's a chart that is in the Rhode Island housing fee in lieu by municipality. There are probably 10 communities that are at 40,000, and then it's all over the place. And the idea is that this money goes into a fund generally held by the town or their affordable housing collaborative or commission. They then use these funds to partner with a nonprofit organization to build the housing. So it pays for the cost to build affordable housing, which may not be able to be located on a particular site due to constraints.
I understand what you're saying, but in the law it says it's the difference between the maximum affordable sales price for a qualifying family of 4 and the average cost of developing a single unit. So there is, I mean, if you figure out what the average cost of developing a home is and then what the maximum sales price is, I think you have. And it's supposed to be developed every year, by the way. So annually, it would be determined. So
Yeah, I think there's a lot of confusion
seems
because
to actually be more suited to what you're trying to do is develop this pool of money. But so I'll just stop there and then we'll go to the second question.
Yes, if you again, communities such as Bristol, Charlestown, Jamestown, Little Compton, Middletown, Narragansett, New Shoreham, Newport, Portsmouth, South Kingstown, West Warwick are all at Westerly are all at 40,000. There's no way that you can build something or acquire a piece of property for that money. So the idea is to make it more fair and equitable across the board so that there is enough money to do something. If this particular route is taken, and it isn't always taken, but most communities have opted out because it's not practical.
So if I may, the Rep.
Hang
McEntee.
on, please, Ms. Morgan, would you unmute?
Sorry.
Representative Morgan, would you unmute yourself?
Sorry, I thought I did. So then the second question is, if you add $75,000 to the cost of every home, doesn't that make it more difficult for the family that is trying to buy that home? Because, I mean, the developer just doesn't pull this money out of the air. He has to put it somewhere, and I assume he's going to put it on the cost on that home that he's selling to somebody.
It's the $75,000 is instead of building the home on a particular site. So instead of building the home, that developer pays the fee that goes into the fund, and then that fund is used to develop housing. So it's not any kind of additional cost. It's an instead of building the house on a particular subdivision. They pay a fee, and then that fee goes into this
He's
kitty.
going to put that on to a home that he is developing.
May I clarify?
Yep. Hang on one second. First, second Vice Chair, Ms. Speakman.
Yeah, just maybe I can help clarify this. This is, the payment in lieu comes when the developer is using inclusionary zoning. And what that means is he or she is building a development and he gets a density bonus in return for producing units of affordable housing. Typically, those units are produced on the same site as the market rate units, but there is this option here. As Ms. Mack said, sometimes it's not possible to put extra units in on a particular plot of land, so the developer has the option of a fee in lieu in which he would give to the town $75,000 per unit of affordable that he is obliged to build, but does not build on the site. So it's in return for a density bonus. So the developer gets to build more market rate housing in return for this $75,000. And it goes into a fund, typically in the community, although as Ms. Mack said, it's rarely used. And then the community finds a way to build those affordable units elsewhere.
So it is not attached to affordable housing at all, or it is attached to developments that have a mixture of market rate and affordable housing?
Yes, it is. It's a mixture, but if the affordable housing units aren't built integrated with the market rate units, then the developer has the opportunity to, or the obligation to contribute $75,000 based on an agreement made with the municipality.
Okay, so Representative Speakman, do you know about this formula that's already in law? Has anyone ever done those calculations to see if $75,000 is reasonable, or if it's too little or too much? Has anyone done that?
The minimum is at $40,000 right now, and that is not enough. If that's the obligation that the developer has, $40,000 is not enough to build an affordable unit anywhere. So it doesn't solve the problem it's designed to solve, and that's the reason for Representative McEntee's legislation or change.
All right, thank you.
It's complicated.
Thank you. No, clarification was excellent. Ms. Mack, thank you. Any more questions for Ms. Mack? Second Vice. Second Vice Chair.
Okay, we have two pieces of written testimony, both against. One is from John Mark Antonio from the Rhode Island Builders Association, and one is from Brenda Clement from the Housing Works Rhode Island. And as one of the sponsors of the bill, I do agree with Representative McEntee that we do need to work on the language a little bit more to clarify. The 10 years might be too long for the town to hold on to. We want to get the units built more quickly. Thank you.
Vice Chair Fogarty, I just want to, that was an excellent explanation. Vice Chair Speakman, it is a complicated thing. I understand Rep. Morgan, asking the questions because we did this in South Kingstown years ago. It does take a few minutes to wrap your head around it, but I do believe that this is good legislation. That's why I signed on, because the $40,000 is just not enough. And really, just remember, the builder does, with these density changes, does get to build another house. So we're changing density, so they are getting to build more. So the builders being against it, it's like I just heard the two letters. They really are getting more. They're getting more of an opportunity to build, and then put the money away for people who can't afford to live in pretty much every community now in the state of Rhode Island. And we weren't getting enough money to make it affordable to make affordable housing. So I do think that an increase is definitely necessary. Again, the wording might need to be tightened up a little bit, but I don't think 75,000 is out of the ballpark to try to start building multiple affordable housing units, not just one. For some people, we've got to do something, and this is the way of doing it without, I think, the least impact. Thank you.
Sure. Okay, so that, unless there are any other questions or comments from the committee, that closes the hearing on this bill. Thank you, Representative McEntee, 5695.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairwoman, and thank you, members of the committee.
Okay. Whew, let's lighten it up a little bit.
Please.
Let's go to Representative Cardillo's bill, 5691. 5691, an act relating to towns and cities. Awards of municipal contracts. Representative Cardillo, you have the floor.
Okay. What this bill does, it's designed to help the local businesses in our state. With all the businesses that closed during this pandemic, I wanted to try to help the small business reopen and get the economy moving again, is what it does. I mean, we can't forget that local businesses pay a majority of taxes, from business license, unemployment, vehicle repairs, property taxes, we can go on. And they hire a lot of local employees. And of course, they spend all their money mostly locally within the state, and that's what this bill does. See, out-of-state companies, they don't pay the taxes that our local businesses pay to the state or our municipalities or whatever. So, what it does, it gives a priority to local businesses to bid on municipal contracts, as long as they are within 3% of the lowest bid, and as long as the contracts are not federally funded. And that's the basis of the bill.
Are there any questions on the bill? Fine, Bill. First Vice Chair.
We have, we have one. Sorry, is there a question from the committee?
Somebody?
That was Rep. Fogarty, I'm sorry.
Oh, Rep. Fogarty.
Sorry, I can't see.
I thought you said very first Vice Chair. I didn't mean to interrupt. I know that this bill, this is what I used to ask on the town council when I was on the town council in South Kingstown, because we put things out to bid, and we have a car dealership down the street, and they would bid more than somebody like, say, in New Hampshire, and I'm like, why can't we go with the local? But the constraint is that they always have to take the lowest bid possible. And I think there's in this law, I was just trying to look it up, that's kind of the way it is. Even sometimes 3% higher is not going to, the 3% higher than the lowest bid doesn't fit in that range. I just want people to understand why that happens sometimes. I know it's very frustrating. I mean, we could certainly give it a try this time around, but just to let you know that a lot of the towns are constrained because they have to take the lowest bid. And I've seen it happen, and you wanted to give it locally, but you can't. Thank you.
But wouldn't this bill then make an exception? I mean, that's why we pass laws.
It was 3%, and sometimes they're not going to fall into that category. You know, it might be a wider range. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chairman.
Hang on one second, Representative. Kazarian?
Oh, thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to commend the sponsor for this legislation. I think it's really important, especially now during COVID, we're starting to reopen the economy. We want to make sure we're supporting our local businesses, that we try to, when we have contracts, award them to the local businesses that are providing these services, making sure they're staying on their feet. Most of them employ local Rhode Islanders. So I think it's a great bill. I think it's a good business, small business bill, and I just want to commend the sponsor.
Yes. Sounds good. Any more questions on the bill? Rep. Edwards?
Chairman.
You have the floor.
Thank you, Chairman. First, I'd like to have my presence noted and my votes counted. And on this particular piece of legislation, Rep. Fogarty is correct. 3% is a very, very small margin.
Mm-hmm.
The sponsor might want to look at language that would also say low responsible, or put some language in there to that effect that would give the locals a little more advantage than just the 3%, because 3% margin is very, very difficult to beat. So, and your local people aren't always going to be able to beat like a national company or something coming in. So I commend the sponsor for the intent, and I think if with some adjustment, it might be something that will work better for our small businesses. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Any more questions on the bill? First Vice Chair.
We have one piece of written testimony from Maureen Grillo with the Associated Builders and Contractors, and it is against the bill. That is it.
Thank you. That concludes 5691. 91. Thank you. Let's move to First Vice Chair Speakman's 5953. First Vice Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This bill would re-establish the commission that was ably chaired by our former colleague Shelby Maldonado that examined the low mod housing bill, which we have just been talking about. It's been in effect for many years and needs and hasn't achieved the stated goal of ensuring that 10% of all of the housing units in all Rhode Island communities are affordable to low and moderate income families. So it needs a good hard look, and hopefully after that good hard look, some adjustments will be made to the legislation that gets us to our goal of providing safe, affordable housing for all Rhode Island families. The commission, we've heard from several folks who would like to see additions to the membership of the commission. In particular, the disability community would like to have a seat at the table. That makes sense to me. It's a 16-member commission at this point that includes folks from multiple disciplines that work on housing. I urge my colleagues' support. Are there any questions? Are you running it?
We have questions. We have Mr. Walsh on the phone.
Okay.
Bill, Rhode Island Builders Association, you have the floor. Go ahead, Bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Bill Walsh on behalf of the Rhode Island Builders Association here with you this evening now in strong support of the study commission offered by Representative Speakman, and we're thankful that the sponsor and this committee and all the members of the House and the leadership have prioritized this important work. We very much stand in strong support of the continuation of this review and hope to be an active participant and implementing as much as possible, as quickly as possible. So we're here in support. We thank everyone for doing it. And I know there was earlier commentary about including this in the Land Use Study Commission. I think respectfully we would disagree and think that this area of work has so much targeted and important work that needs to be addressed individually. We can certainly collaborate on the other end with other land use recommendations, but there's a lot of things that are very unique to the LMI housing area that don't have to do with land use. So we think taking a targeted review is very sensible. So with that, happy to answer your questions.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Walsh? Thank you. Let's move right to Jennifer Hawkins. She's on the line, I'm sorry.
Jennifer's unavailable.
Jennifer is unavailable. We will move to Mr. Marshall. Please bear with us. And just for everybody that's watching, they're moving the phone so it can get to the TV, so it can get to us. So that's what's happening. Mr. Marshall, welcome to the House Municipal Government and Housing. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chairman Hall, and to Representative Speakman for allowing me to speak on behalf of the Rhode Island Developmental Disabilities Council on this bill. She just mentioned that we have requested that address the needs of people with intellectual and developmental disabilities have been long disregarded when it comes to planning for housing. And so we would respectfully request that a representative from the Developmental Disabilities Council be included in this decision on housing. And as she said, she's open to it. So we hope that that can be done before this is passed. I'll be happy to take any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Marshall? Thank you very much, Mr. Marshall. First Vice Chair.
We have several folks who have submitted written testimony on this bill. Carol Ventura from Rhode Island Housing is in favor. Robert Marshall, from whom we just heard, is in favor but would like to see a change, which I certainly, as the sponsor, am open to. Brenda Clement from Housing Works Rhode Island is in favor. Kenneth Vilarski from Home Housing Systems is in favor. Jeff Davis from American Planners Association Rhode Island is in favor, and Brian Daniels from the Rhode Island League of Cities and Towns is in favor. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
And that closes the hearing on my bill, 5953. Thank you.
Good job. Okay. Representative Toban. I'll give you a little bit of time to get yourself on the TV. There you are.
Thank you, Chair.
Representative Toban, your bill number. Hang on one second. 5634, an act relating to taxation, levies, and assessments of local taxes. Representative Toban, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Basically, 5634 is we have seen a lot of green energy projects going up around the state, and whether it be in land that could not be used because of contamination or other wind, solar farms. What this act pretty much asks is that the municipality will not increase the price of the taxes on the value beyond the land, only collect on the tangible tax. Because the Supreme Court also ruled that the equipment used to create green energy is therefore considered a manufacturing equipment because it's manufacturing energy, and therefore it's tax exempt. So that's the premise of this bill. And if I could take any questions, I'm happy to do so at this time.
Any questions for Representative Tobar? Oh, Representative Morales, please.
Representative Tabone, I just wanted to thank you again for introducing this legislation. I think it's a very important piece of legislation that we need to move forward in order to ensure that there's a consistent tax structure. And I think furthermore, this will help us expand our renewable energy infrastructure across the state. And given some of the effects of climate change, I think now more than ever, it's important that we do everything we can to try to meet our goal of 100% renewable energy by 2030. So thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Second Vice Chair speaking.
Thank you. We have a resolution from the town of Warren in opposition to the bill, from Town Council President Kerry Cronin. We have Henry Boninger from Green Development LLC in favor of the bill, Charles Randall from the Rhode Island Association of Assessing Officers against the bill, Neil Dupuy from the City of Providence against the bill, Elizabeth Monty, the Hopkinton Tax Assessor, against the bill, Sarah Frew from East Providence Tax Assessing against the bill, and Seth Handy from Handy Law in favor of the bill.
Thank you. And that concludes, any other questions? Okay, thank you. That concludes 5634.
There's testimony.
There is
Thank you,
testimony?
Chairman. Thank you.
Verbal?
Oops, sorry about that.
Hannah Morini is on line 1.
Beg your pardon.
Hannah is on line 1.
Hannah is on line 1. Welcome, Hannah. Welcome, Hannah, to House Municipal Government and Housing. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Chairman and members of the committee. Thank you very much for taking testimony today. I am calling in to support this bill, which solves a major issue that has been plaguing the renewable energy industry for over a decade. I've been involved with renewable energy in our state since 2009. And this is something that has been a major issue both from a financial perspective, but also just from a predictability and transparency of renewable energy development in the state. The General Assembly actually solved this issue back in 2016, during the session in 2016, and then the rules were passed through a truly robust, involved stakeholder process over the summer in 2016, and they went into effect at the end of the year. We did not see that until 2018 when the new tax bills came out, that 5 years later the assessors are still taxing these projects in a manner that is inconsistent with this law. The law states that associated equipment may be taxed only pursuant to rules and regulations that will be established by the Office of Energy Resources, which includes tangible taxes only. So the bill before you adds further clarification to the existing law, which was actually recommended as necessary by Judge Leach during a request for summary judgment. So this law allows taxation through tangible taxes and prohibits also hiking up the underlying property values in order to increase the taxation of these projects. So it's very important to understand that this is necessary from a predictability and transparency perspective, and also important to note that this does not prevent towns from collecting property taxes. This does not mean they're property tax exempt. It means that they cannot increase the value of the property because of the solar being there, in addition to collecting those tangible taxes. So that means that commercial land can still be taxed as commercial land, residential land can still be taxed as residential land, and if something is in farmland and open space, farmland, forest, and open space, it can be reclassified. It can come out of that into the zone in which it actually lies, and be taxed as commercial or residential land. But it prevents increasing taxes in both manners, which is the original intent of the law. Thank you very much. I'm happy to answer questions. But as someone who's worked in this industry for a long time in the state, I can tell you this is absolutely necessary. Thank you very much for your time this afternoon.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Let's move on to Mr. Daniels for Rhode Island League of Cities and Towns. Mr. Daniels, you have the floor. Good evening, Mr. Daniels.
Yes.
You have the floor.
Great. Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. This is Brian Daniels, Executive Director of the Rhode Island League of Cities and Towns, and have submitted testimony on a number of bills today. I just wanted the record to reflect there were two bills that had come up that I submitted written testimony on that I don't think were reflected. Those were H5676 by Representative Marzolkowski and 5785 by Representative Vella Wilkinson. I appreciate the committee dealing with a number of bills associated with property tax today, and that's particularly important to the League of Cities and Towns because, as I think most committee members realize, that property taxes are the primary revenue source of cities and towns in Rhode Island. It's the largest revenue source for most communities. The one good thing about property taxes is that they apply to a large portion of property in the community, so every resident, every business, every property owner contributes to the services that they use. But by definition, that also means when you create special exemptions for certain groups, then those lost revenues have to be made up by everybody else. The analogy that's easy to use is if you have the long, thin balloon and you squeeze one end of it, the air has to go to the other end. So that's how property taxes work. Every time you create a special exemption for a particular group, everyone else has to make it up. So we appreciate the fact that the committee's hearing a number of those bills today. We want to have that people have that context. Also, it's important for the committee to remember that we have the 9th highest property tax burden in the country, and municipal leaders are trying very hard to control those costs. In the current fiscal year 21, property taxes statewide increased only by 1.5%, and the average has been about 2%. So municipal leaders are trying very hard to control property tax costs, and they don't want to have special exemptions lead to cost increases for others. So with regard to this particular bill on renewable energy legislation, as the committee is aware, there are large solar installations in a number of communities, including southern and western Rhode Island, because of the availability of open space. Now, the way these projects are taxed is like any other revenue-generating operation. There's a tangible tax that's applied to the equipment itself. That's what you heard. That was standardized through rules and regulation. But like any other revenue-generating operation, there's also the real property tax on the land, and that's based on the use of the land supported by market data. Now, we do believe, and I've spoken with a lot of municipal tax assessors, that it is the General Assembly's intent that the land under renewable energy projects be taxed at a more market-based rate. And the reason we believe that, well, one of the reasons we believe that, is that in 2017, the General Assembly passed a law that allowed farm owners to carve out about 20%, up to 20% of their farmland and use that for renewable energy. And specifically in that law, it makes it clear that that 20% will be taxed at a different rate unless there is an agricultural use going on with the renewable energy, such as cows grazing or things like that. So it's clear that there's always been the intent that the property underneath the solar panels and the solar installations would be taxed at the market rate. So that's one of the reasons we oppose this bill today. We think that this would create preferential tax treatment for all renewable energy projects, and that would be different from pretty much any other revenue-generating commercial operation that we're aware of in the state. And because we oppose special tax treatment for particular categories or industries, we have to oppose the legislation 5634. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you. Second Vice Chair.
We did the witnesses already
All
on this
set?
bill. Yep.
Oh, then that
Thank you.
will conclude 5634. Thank you.
the testimony, I should say. Yeah.
Thank you. We will now move on to 5589. And we still have on the line Mr. Daniels. Would you wait just 1 second? Let me put this into play. An act relating to taxation, levies, and assessments of local taxes. Mr. Daniels, are you still up with us? 5589.
He hung up, we're going to call him back.
Okay. While we're waiting, any questions while we're waiting from the committee?
Is this on House Bill 5589? Are we
That is
talking about
correct.
now?
That is correct, Representative.
I'll testify that I am against this bill. I've seen this bill been put in before. And I refer to even one of the memos, a letter of opposition to 5589 from one of the town managers, from Warren, actually. Because this whole thing about capping 20% reevaluations, if anybody sat on the town council, and I know Vice Chair Speakman has sat on the town council, that's why we do these reevaluations every 3 years, so you can get a picture of what your town's your value of your property is. You did a picture back in 2008, 2007, 2009 when we were in the bad years versus now on your tax evaluations. It's completely different. So you can't have these types of 20% caps on them. That's why you do them every 3 years, and then you reevaluate. As I said, due to market effects, certain areas of towns may increase at different rates than the town average. If towns are limited or capped during these years of reevaluation, this could cause values to be grossly underassessed and would create inequity. The same trend would continue in the next reevaluation. So it could cause a disparity between assessed values and market values to be even greater. So capping at 20% would force cities and towns to assess at lower percentage than the market value and raise the tax rate. So it really doesn't benefit by trying to say to cap something like that. You might feel better about that, but in the long run, it ends up being inequitable through parts of the town, and then you end up having litigation, and you'd be paying for your lawyers and to fight between one part of the town who's paying this and the other part who's paying that. So I totally disagree with this bill. I've seen it before by the same sponsor, and I believe everybody's municipal governments or city governments would tell them not to support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Fogate. I tend to agree with you in the interest of the cities and towns and how they have to operate their budgets. Mr. Daniels, we tried to call him back. He's not answering, but he is opposed to the bills from the Rhode Island Leagues of Cities and Towns. Any other questions on 5589? 5589. Second Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chairman. We have several people submitting written testimony. Kate Michaud, the Warren Town Manager. Feng Chen, the Warren Finance Director. They're active, Warren is my town. Christopher Leedon, the Warren Tax Assessor, are all opposed. Kenneth Swain, the Tax Assessor from Charlestown, opposed. Neil Dupuy, City of Warwick, opposed. Elizabeth Monty, the Tax Assessor from Hopkinton, opposed. And Sarah Frew, the Tax Assessor from East Providence, opposed. I'm picking up a pattern there, Mr. Chairman, and that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? That will close 5589. Let us move to Representative Place 5495, an act relating to the excise motor vehicle and trailers. 5495. Representative Place. Any questions on 5495? Hearing no questions, that will close House Bill 5495. Let us move to Representative Handy's bill 5694, an act relating to motor and other vehicles, quadricycles, passenger vehicles. Representative Handy, you have the floor. 5694. Okay, any questions on 5694? Hearing none, that will conclude 5694, Representative Handy's bill. Let's move to Representative Edwards. Edwards' bill. Oh, okay, and that was 5694 we just did, right? Right. And just before we move to Representative Edwards, there was a written testimony, Walter Craddock, Khan. Okay. Thank you. Now let us move to Representative Edwards' Bill 5954, an act relating to taxation, levies, and of local taxes. Representative Edwards.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm actually going to withdraw this bill. It has a sunset on it. I introduced legislation earlier in the session that removed the sunset. I don't really remember how this bill got added in, so I apologize, but we can withdraw this bill, Mr. Chairman.
That will conclude 5954. Thank you, Mr. Edwards. Let us move to Representative Felipe. We have to give him a call. Representative Felipe's Bill 5408, an act relating to alcohol beverage licenses generally. We'll be waiting on Representative Felipe. Requires a notice and application to owners of properties within 200 feet of the site proposed liquor license to be given by certified mail. Representative Felipe, are you on the phone? Welcome, Representative. You have the floor. Welcome.
Thank you, Chairman Hall. So this bill has been before the committee. I think this is the third year, H5408. Essentially what this does is require neighbors that are adjacent to someone applying for a liquor license to receive their mail by certification. This bill was brought about probably about 3 years ago. A town had granted a liquor license to an applicant, but had failed to provide the required mail notice to the neighbors. The neighbors hired attorneys, went to town, the liquor license was rescinded. The neighbors had to hire an attorney, spend that money, and the person who was opening the bar had expended tens of thousands of dollars renovating the bar in reliance on the license, which was subsequently rescinded. Having this change protects the applicant and the neighbors and makes sure that everything is on the up and up, and that when the licenses are granted, everyone is protected. So that's the introduction, Mr. Chairman. I'm free for questions from anybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Leader. Any questions for Representative Felipe? There are no questions. Representative Felipe, thank you very much. That will conclude Representative Felipe's 5408. Representative speaking?
There's no written testimony on this bill.
Thank you. That will conclude 5408. Let's move on to...
Thank you, Chairman. Good night, everybody.
Good night, sir. Let us move on to 5426, Representative Place's bill, an act relating to alcohol beverages theater licenses. Expands the definition of a legitimate theaters to extend beyond the city of Newport and the town of Burrillville. Representative Place, you have the floor. Five, 4, 2, 6. Are there any questions from the committee? There is no written testimony for it. That will conclude Representative Place's Bill 5426. Let's move on to Representative O'Brien's Bill 5410, an act relating to taxation, levies, and assessments of local taxes. Representative Bryan, you have the floor. Representative O'Brien is not on the floor. I am just looking for any written testimony. Written testimony, 541. Yep. We're ready for Mr. Salvatore. You're on, Mr. Salvatore? Welcome, Councilman, to the House Municipal Government and Housing. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chairman and members of the committee. David Salvatore, representing the Rhode Island Association of Realtors. It's good to be before the committee again. It's been talked about a lot tonight what cities and towns are required to do relative to statistical updates and revaluations. As you know, 44.5.11.6 of the general laws do require cities and towns to provide
He said he would like to withdraw it, and I just closed it.
Hello?
I'm sorry, Mr. Salvatore. My button was up. Could you please repeat? I'm sorry.
No problem. So cities and towns are required to conduct a statistical update every 3 years of their real property, and then within 9 years, a full revaluation. We've heard from homeowners over the last several years that have informed us that some municipalities have attempted to circumvent that requirement, whether that be intentional or not. And from the perspective of homeowners, assessing properties after the transfer of a title based on the sale price of a home is certainly not consistent with the spirit of the law. So, for example, 2 years ago, the town of Barrington attempted to do this, and I believe there were 300 homes impacted in the town. 200 homes saw their property tax bills increase, and I believe it was around 100 saw their property tax bills decrease. Again, it's been stated throughout this meeting that we don't want to skew assessment data, and I understand that right now values of homes are outpacing some of the assessments that are out there. But again, the sticker shock that some homeowners have received because the tax assessors have unilaterally implemented these policies that would reassess a property based on the sale price, we don't think is equitable, and it's certainly not fair. I think the last thing any of us want to do is create a welcome to Rhode Island tax, especially when we do have a new home buyer moving from out of state into Rhode Island. So for those reasons, we certainly support the bill. We thank Representative O'Brien and Corvasi for introducing it on our behalf, and we're looking forward to working with members of the committee and folks in the community to improve the tax situation here in Rhode Island. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Are there any questions? Representative Morales.
Mr. Salvatore, thank you for your testimony. How common are quote-unquote spot assessments, and depending on how common they are, in which cities or geography in terms of the state of Rhode Island are they most often happening?
Yeah, so we learned about this. Thank you for your question, Representative. We learned about this 2 years ago based on information that was provided to us by Barrington homeowners. It's my understanding that this was also attempted in Newport County. We were happy to hear that the town solicitor in Barrington said to elected officials and the assessor, this is not the prudent tax policy that you want to adopt. The courts are going to side with homeowners who are appealing these tax bills. And, it was also said tonight during this meeting that, lawsuits and appeals cost taxpayers money. So I think we should avoid spending taxpayer money on litigating a lot of these issues and mitigating those legal costs, and just communicate with new home buyers that, look, you are going to be treated just as fairly as the person on the next block. But again, our biggest concern is that this could skew assessment data and property values, not only for that block, but for the entire jurisdiction. So it was brought to our attention from the Barrington example, and again, it's my understanding that this was attempted in some cities or towns in Newport County.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Second Vice Chair Speakman.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Salvatore. I have a question that comes from my experience in Barrington, although I was no longer in Barrington when this particular controversy happened. So, if I bought a home last year or 3 years ago for $200,000, or 2 years ago, say, and I did some work to it, and the real estate market got really hot, and I sold it for $3 million. But the tax bill says that the home is worth $200,000. So the new buyer is in a home that the market says is worth $2.3 million, but they're still paying on $200,000. I keep changing my numbers. Is that right?
So if upgrades are made to the home, you would be, as a homeowner, required to obtain a permit from the city. And at that point, the city or town can reassess based on the upgrades in that home. But if permits were not pulled to make upgrades to the home, you're not going to see that large spike of $200,000 to $3 million. But again, cities and towns do have the ability to reassess based on that example of upgrades being made to a home. Our concern is that if upgrades are not made to a home and a home is sold for more than it's assessed at, that's not equitable in terms of tax policy for other homeowners in that, again, jurisdiction.
This is all a very controversial area, I know, but when I was in municipal government, the rule was that the true value of a home is what a willing buyer and a willing seller agree on, and that obviously is not the case for the purposes of this bill.
Yeah, again, if the General Assembly wants to entertain, and we hope that RIAR would be a part of that conversation, making changes to general law and the revaluation schedule, then that's certainly a conversation, again, that we're willing to have. But in terms of the Rhode Island general law, cities and towns, as you know, and many others know, are required to perform a statistical update every 3 years and then a full reval every 9.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Councilman Salvatore.
Thank you, Chair.
Second Vice Chair.
That's the only phone
Yes.
witness. We have 4 people who have submitted written testimony. David Salvatore, from whom we just heard, is in favor. Neil Dupree from the City of Warwick is against. Brian Daniels from the League of Cities and Towns is against. And Sarah Frew from the East Providence Tax Assessor is for.
Thank you. That concludes
5410.
5410. Thank you. Let us move to House Bill 5409. Representative Price. Okay, an act relating to taxation, property subject to taxation. I do have somebody, Kerry Petrarca. Okay, we'll be waiting. Changes the filing dates for elderly and disabled tax exemption in the town of Exeter from March 15 to April 15 of each year.
What number is that again, Mr. Chairman?
That is 5409. Representative Price.
No answer at that number that we have.
Okay, and that's from the town of Exeter, Kerry Petrarca, that we were trying to call. And we will leave a message. Okay. I don't have any written testimony also for 5409. Any other questions from the committee? That will conclude 5409. We will now move to Representative Mcnamara, Bill 5816, an act relating to taxation, provides that the town of Warwick, no separate class of zoning district be assigned or designated based solely upon the scenic view. No property in particular class, zone, or district be assessed or increased at a rate from other properties because of a scenic view. Representative Mcnamara, you have the floor. Representative Mcnamara is not on the floor. I don't have any written testimony, pro or con. Does anybody in the committee have any questions? No questions. That will conclude Representative Mcnamara's Bill 5816. We will now move to Representative Giraldo. I know you've been waiting, and I want to say thank you. And we'll move to Representative Giraldo's Bill 5692, an act relating to the waters and navigations of Narragansett Bay Commission, the transfer of the ownership and sewage infrastructure from the City of Central Falls to Narragansett Bay Commission. That's a good one. Representative Giraldo, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the Municipal Government and Housing Committee, and good evening. I've submitted H5692 at the request of the City of Central Falls, and a letter from Mayor Rivera should be in the committee documents for your reference. This bill would allow municipalities the ability to transfer their sewer system to the Narragansett Bay Commission. This is important as most small cities like Central Falls do not have the expertise, manpower, resources, or capacity to manage an entire underground sewer utility. Each year, municipalities have to call in experts and pay overwhelming prices to do even the smallest jobs that end up costing our cities and taxpayers tremendous amounts. The Narragansett Bay Commission already has an extensive infrastructure of interceptors, pump stations, tide gates, and combined sewer overflows that they own and operate. They also obviously manage and bill customers for what's flowing through all of those pipes. This bill would give them ownership of the pipes themselves and is enabling legislation for Central Falls and other municipalities to begin to shift their infrastructure over to NBC. I know that NBC has been in discussion with Mayor Rivera for a while now and has also recently contacted me to discuss it further, and I look forward to meeting with that. I look forward to meeting with them. And with that said, I want to thank you, Mr. Chairman, and the committee for your time.
Thank you. Representative Williams.
Thank you, Chairman. And Representative Giraldo, is there going to be a cost to the city to have this exchange, not exchange, is there going to be a takeover? It might not be the right word being used, but the City of Central Falls is relinquishing their rights to Narragansett Bay Commission. So they will now become the owner of the facility in Central Falls, so all of the tubes and things.
Yeah, if I may, that is correct. That's what the bill intends.
Okay, so then is the City of Central Falls going to be paying Narragansett Bay Commission for that service, or are they now going to be the sole owner of all of that stuff in Central Falls? If you understand what I'm saying.
I do, and if I may, Representative, they will bill accordingly, since they're taking over the structure. If this goes through, they're not just going to take it over and not bill for the services.
And it's enabling legislation for any other city in town to also turn over their rights to the Narragansett Bay Commission at a cost. Sometimes. Maybe.
It doesn't necessarily say at a cost. That's up to NBC to determine. But it does enable other municipalities to follow the same route.
So if it's not at a cost, so NBC will be doing this at the kindness of their heart because they want to make sure that that city or town pipes are all cleaned out and in working order. I just want to get it to understand, because if it's a good deal like that, maybe there's another city that I might encourage to bring on and let them have it. We got a whole bunch of messed up pipes in our city, Just a question, a sincere, honest one.
It's a good question, if I may, Representative. I understand a lot of the cities and towns, they're having trouble with
Hold on
it.
a minute, Mr. Chairman.
Yep.
This your legislation?
No, but I
was asking
understand
the
it.
sponsor of the bill, baby.
I just understand it, that's all.
Thank you. No, you can proceed. I was just busting you, that's all.
Representative, you can proceed. I was just trying to hit.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd say that this is enabling legislation, and so what that could look like is up to NBC and the municipalities to determine whether it's feasible, whether it's a good decision or not. This just gives us the opportunity to be able to do that.
Thank you very much.
Have those conversations.
Thank you.
And any other question? Seeing no other question, Representative Morales.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just wanted to clarify then. So again, this is enabling legislation that would not only just affect the city of Central Falls, but other municipalities across the state then, correct?
That is
correct.
Thank you.
And it may, but any other question? Yes. Any other questions for Representative Giraldo? I think it's good legislation. It's particular for the city of Providence, making it enabling.
Hey,
our structure's old also, and we could use the assistance.
For free, yeah, honey baby. For free, baby. Yeah, we can.
With that said, that will conclude first, second vice chair.
We have two pieces of written testimony on this bill. Lori Horridge of the Narragansett Bay Commission is against the bill, and Mayor Maria Rivera of Central Falls is for the bill.
Thank you. No other questions. That will conclude House Bill 5692.
And may I, for the record, on Bill 5691, Maria Grillo from Associated Builders and Contractors is against 5691, and on Bill 5495, Sarah Frew, East Providence Tax Assessor, is against the bill. I'm sorry that I missed those when we were doing those bills. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I want to thank everyone this evening and the people who are watching for bearing with us. It's been a nice night. I make a motion to adjourn.
So move. And this is Friday night, just so you know. And I didn't get paid, but you know, it's Friday night.
Have a nice evening. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Chairman.